whole lot of loving is what we'll be bringing. We'll make you happy.
Hello and welcome to episode 26 of Schools with Heart. Today I'm introducing Lucy again. I haven't introduced, this is her chew bone. She loves it. So she's 11 months old yesterday, and I haven't introduced her for a while. So I'm gonna put her up here. No, I'm not. I'm gonna hold her. There. This is Lucy. She's looking for her bone. This is it right here. Isn't she cute? She is so much fun. My little Maltese Lucy. Say hello. Hello. Today I'm also introducing a key component of our SEL curriculum that no school in America should ever be without: growth mindset. Like all of the bricks that fashioned the school that Love built, the birth of growth mindset sprang forth on a particular day in a particular place. I'll never forget it. I remember every little thing about the revelation, like I was there right now. It was in Sacramento at the California League of Middle Schools conference in 2012. Debbie Silver was the highlight speaker. And there were over 700 educators in the room, all in circular chairs, tables. I was up for California State Educator of the Year. It was, to say the least, a tremendously exciting time. At the time of the conference, I had just completed the Little Red Hen chapter of my first book, Living the Lessons. You remember that the Little Red Hen worked hard, so she got the cake. I was all about creating a classroom where my students worked hard, about a strong work ethic, without which their futures held little hope for success. Along with my valued employee focus, which I will tell you about in future videos, my greatest challenge was not about disrespectful behavior as it is today, but it was about the apathy pandemic that was sweeping across America. The apathy pandemic. It was about lazy students, about students who didn't care about doing their best and reaching their full potential. My greatest challenge was about students whose singular joy in life seemed to be their cell phones, their friends, and their video games. I was pouring my attention into waking my students up, to waking up their giants. If it's possible to go overboard on the hard work focus, then I went overboard. I bought cakes for kids who worked hard. I bought medals for kids who worked hard. I hung signs from the ceiling that said, "Choose to care." I tutored my kids during my prep period. I conferenced with parents. I introduced the King quote, "It's not about how smart you are, it's about how hard you're willing to work and the quality of your character." Along with emotional intelligence, the hard work focus dominated our classroom. I remember a conference with a father that year who wanted to transfer his son to another class because he believed I pushed his son too hard, that I made him work too hard. His son, who never completed his homework or studied for tests, was failing, but only because he was lazy, apathetic, and completely nonchalant about the F's on his report card. He was, and I knew it, potentially an honor student. In essence, the father wanted an easier teacher. I wish I had a video of that conference, because the teachers of America could witness a true account of a teacher at war for her student. A teacher who refused to give in to a misguided, ill-advised parent. A parent who, instead of pushing his son to reach his full potential, was making pathetic excuses for his son. I could have easily acquiesced. I could have given in, and in doing so, I would have avoided a raging confrontation. I could have backed down. I could have lowered my bar and raised the white flag. I could have sadly admitted defeat. But tough love prevailed that momentous day. I stood my ground, and I convinced him that the principal would support me. I boldly spoke words of truth that very few teachers would have been brave enough to utter for fear of reprisal. I told that father that he was robbing his son of a bright future, that he was, by his actions, telling his son that he didn't have what it takes to make it in this world. And I got through. My stubborn love for his son convinced him of his own misguided parental intentions. The happy ending to that unforgettable conference is that his son stayed in my class, adopted a growth mindset, and graduated with honor roll grades. Hallelujah. I will never forget the last day of school when that boy thanked me for not letting him transfer out of my class. That day in Sacramento at the CLMS conference, I was a teacher with a mission. I was ready for anything that would help me inspire my students to work hard for the cake. And that day, the door opened wide to an answer that transformed my SEL curriculum forever. Growth mindset. Growth mindset is an answer to our students who don't care to keep going when the going gets tough, so to speak. It's an answer for our students with little stick-to-itiveness, an answer for quitters in our classrooms. They are our students with fixed mindsets, our students who don't think they're smart enough, our students with little self-confidence, and oh, they are legion in our country. 1 year at a time, they get further and further behind. This very day, I got an email from Angela Duckworth, the groundbreaking author of Grit. The bottom line message was that teachers who value and believe in their students empower their students to rise to their high expectations. My student from the parent conference knew that about me. He knew by my courageous battle to keep him with me that I valued and believed in his abilities, and it motivated him to stay in my class and work hard. In all likelihood, it changed the entire trajectory of his life. That day at the Sacramento conference, I met the author of Mindset, Carol Dweck, via a big screen video. As she began to talk about praising our students for their hard work and not their degree of intelligence, I could hardly stay in my seat. Intuitively, I knew I would go back to my classroom and I would turn it upside down with my new knowledge. In our next video, I'll tell you how to integrate growth mindset into your classroom. But the purpose of today's video thus far was threefold. First, to convince you that growth mindset's potential to transform your students' lives is inexhaustible. Next, to invite you to seriously reflect on the degree to which you express high expectations of your students. And third, to examine your own mindset about your students' abilities. I've told you repeatedly that I want you to really know me, not just on a professional level, but on a more personal level, as someone who wants to connect with you, help you, be there for you. To do that, I have to share my life's experiences and stories with you. I have to open up and be vulnerable. To accomplish that today, I'm going to read you a story that I wrote for Chicken Soup for the Soul. It's the story of how I overcame great odds to be a teacher. I'm sharing the story at this time because it's the story of a young girl with an indomitable growth mindset. My past molded me into who I am today, It made me the teacher I am today. And the story is a sterling example of why growth mindset is so near and dear to me. I hope you enjoy the story. I entitled it, let's see, let me get these in order. Keep the Dream Alive. It was Abraham Heschel who said, quote, "The course of life is unpredictable. No one can write his autobiography in advance." End quote. We can never know when that unforeseen phone call or that unanticipated knock on the door will disturb the quiet, peaceful waters of our seemingly predictable lives and hurl us headlong into a turbulent whirlpool of emotional chaos. Only in retrospect can we know for certain how the entire course of our lives was radically altered by that sudden surprise attack. More often than not, we associate those fateful moments with a tragic loss of a loved one, an ill-fated diagnosis, a fatal accident, a broken promise. Somehow we endure. We survive the grieving process, but life afterwards is never the same, never quite as sweet. On the other hand, in looking back, we may gladly discover that the misfortune, which may well have been our worst enemy, proved in the long run to be our best friend. We rejoice at having uncovered the silver lining behind the dark, threatening clouds of doom. More than mere survivors, we are overcomers. In truth, we are conquerors. And for that reason, we are later truly grateful for that long ago rude awakening. Such is my story. For me, that unforeseen knock on the door arrived at 13 years old, after awakening from an afternoon nap with uncontrollable twitches. Shaken with alarm, my frantic mother rushed me to the nearby hospital, where an unconcerned doctor downplayed my erratic jerks. Month after tortuous month, the twitches continued. Time after time, the doctor sent us back home with the assurance that my problem would eventually resolve itself. In their minds, I was purposefully contriving the condition to draw attention to myself. I stopped holding my mother's morning hot chocolate for fear of splattering it all over the room. Changing classes at school became a humiliating nightmare. I never knew when my knees would momentarily give way, sending my books flying to the ground all around me. Thankfully, no one laughed. The mystery of the twitches was finally unraveled one momentous day in my health class, my 8th grade health class. Reading about different diseases, we came upon one that perfectly described my condition. Excitedly, I took the book home to my parents, and the next day, textbook in hand, we watched as the doctor silently read the highlighted description. Immediate tests confirmed what trained medical doctors had failed to diagnose: epilepsy. The prognosis in the minds of my parents cast a dim light on my future. At such times, parents have a choice. They can regard their child as a handicapped victim of circumstance and thereby lower their expectations, or they can view the condition as a mere obstacle, a challenge requiring dauntless determination and resolute encouragement and support. Unfortunately for me, my parents chose the former. Whereas my siblings were held to the highest academic standards, little was expected of me. As graduation approached, my high school counselor asked about my future plans. When I announced boldly my intention to pursue college and become a teacher, he guffawed derisively and advised me to seriously consider secretarial employment. I needed, he counseled misguidedly, to be realistic about my career choice. Like all the others in my life, he expected very little of me. But I did not take Mr. Berry's advice that day. I refused to allow the low expectations of others to determine the course of my life. What nobody knew was that I had determined to be a teacher long before that in my heart dwelt a dauntless, overcoming spirit. I not only wanted to be a teacher, I had to be a teacher. To everyone's surprise and trepidation, I enrolled in the local junior college. I had decided to prove them all wrong. Whatever it took, I was going to follow my heart, not their well-intentioned advice. It surely was not the easy road. I had to work harder than everyone I knew, but never once did I consider quitting. Never once did I entertain the possibility that perhaps the people in my life were right after all. So when I made the honor roll that first quarter, I completely surprised my family. Though nobody ever spoke the words, I secretly knew that they were not convinced. In fact, they weren't even convinced when I graduated with honors 2 years later. But nobody tried to stop me when I was accepted and enrolled in a prestigious university in another state. I knew I had to get away and make it on my own. It was a giant step on my path to keeping my dream alive, the ultimate test of my commitment. I boarded that airplane all by myself. I found an apartment all by myself. I counted on no one but myself, and I found my wings. Once again, I had not chosen the easy road. That very first semester, I had a serious seizure and suffered from post-concussion syndrome. I couldn't remember a single answer and failed every midterm. As a result, probation loomed over my head like a dark, threatening cloud. A friend asked me why I had chosen teaching as a career, because from what he knew, they don't let epileptics be teachers. I got the phone book out right then and there, and pretending to be a university student doing research on epilepsy, I questioned 12 principals, all of whom said, except for one, that they would not hire an epileptic. I remember sitting speechless for a few minutes, and then suddenly announcing that when I interviewed, I just wouldn't tell them that I had epilepsy. As it turned out, that is exactly what happened. Once again, to everyone's amazement, I graduated, and then it was on to the last leg of my journey, my 5th-year credentialing program at San Diego State. And once again, you guessed it, I had not chosen the easy road. The first morning of student teaching, I awoke in the bathroom with blood splattered all over my face, the sink, and the floor. Devastated with the realization that I had suffered another seizure, I momentarily considered taking my life. But once again, that brave, resolute warrior spirit arose with renewed commitment to keeping my dream alive. Barely recognizable, I rushed to my college supervisor, who upon seeing my face and hearing my story, echoed the words of my high school counselor, "Maybe you should consider a different career." Despite the cynics, the skeptics, the doubters, and the dream thieves, despite all odds, and to everyone's amazement, I was the first in my class to sign a teaching contract before the end of the year. Today, almost 50 years later, I am living my dream. Each day I awake with renewed anticipation, meaningful purpose, gratitude, and a joyful heart, knowing that because I never let my dream die, I have made a positive difference in the lives of thousands and thousands of precious young dreamers. I never chose the easy road, but looking back, I realize that I was never alone. When no one believed in my dream, God was always close by. After all, He was the one who planted the dream in my heart in the first place. And when I was discouraged, He gave me the strength, the courage, and the grace to keep the dream alive. Oh, happy day. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.